Did Ukraine just declare war on Hungary after it struck Hungary's pipeline? Multiple drone strikes. It wasn't just an accident, one little drone strike. No, it was multiple drone strikes. Tensions escalating. This is the headline this afternoon. Has Ukraine just declared war on Hungary? The continued attacks on key pipeline are hurting an EU member, and he chooses to add insult to injury. This is spiraling out of control. In recent days, we've seen tensions in Eastern Europe take an unexpected turn. The attack on key pipelines seemed to have been just the opening move in what some are calling a dangerous escalation. We're also seeing Ukrainian President Zelensky making some bold demands. He doesn't have any demands to make, but he's still making them. I guess if he has NATO support, like a perpetual $1 billion commitment from NATO countries.
Per month.
Per month.
Not just $1 billion.
You and I.
Per month.
Paying out of our taxpayer dollars. He wants us to send him $1 billion in perpetuity. And he's also stepping back from some of the previously discussed land concessions like Crimea and other parts of what was Eastern Ukraine, Donbass, Donetsk, Luhansk, all of that. What is going on with this guy? Too much cocaine? I don't exactly know. It's time to bring in a seasoned voice who can help us make sense of what's really going on in the world. We're going to talk about that in Israel as well. We're going to bring in Colonel Douglas McGregor to give us his take on whether Ukraine has effectively just declared war on Hungary. Colonel, good to see you.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm seasoned enough to comment on someone's coke habits, but I'll give it a try.
You are seasoned, but we'll keep the drug talk away from you. But I don't know what the hell he's thinking, and I don't know why you would want to attack a fellow NATO country. Well, you're not a NATO country, but you're attacking a NATO country, hoping maybe to become part of NATO. I don't know if that's the way it works. Like you make fun of a boy that you're hoping to then turn into your boyfriend, because I just don't understand it. But why is Ukraine continuing to attack Hungary?
Well, two things. Let's keep it in mind. NATO is increasingly, a terminal patient on life support. I don't expect Article 5 will be invoked, and that the rest of NATO will ride to the rescue of Hungary in its collision with Ukraine. I think Zelensky's desperate. He'll do anything for attention, to attract attention, to attract money, anything he possibly can. He reminds me of Trotsky back in 1920, before the decision was made by the Bolsheviks to invade Poland. He predicted the imminent destruction of Poland and unification with their fellow communists in Germany. Well, ultimately, Trotsky was wrong. Poland won the war. The Bolsheviks were driven back in confusion, and Trotsky eventually woke up with an axe in his head. I think something similar probably awaits our friend Zelensky. So these are all acts or expressions of desperation. Now, we need to understand something about Prime Minister Orban. Prime Minister Orban has made it very clear that life and death questions for Hungary that really concern the sovereignty and the independence and the life of Hungary must be decided by Hungarians, not the European Union and not NATO, which is a very intelligent position to take in my judgment. There's no reason why he should surrender his sovereignty to NATO and the EU. I suspect that Messieurs Macron, Starmer, Merz may well have conferred with Zelensky and said, yeah, by all means, let's embarrass Mr. Orban. Let's attack him. He's leading the fight against us and our globalist agenda. So that may be part of the cabal that's responsible for this, but it's not going to improve things for them. And it's certainly not going to distract Orban from doing what he thinks is right, which is to protect Hungary. And he's getting more and more support from within the alliance every day.
Well, what, though, is the selling point of being a part of NATO if your buds won't step up and say, you're kind of not supposed to attack one of us? That's the purpose. Now, President Trump had made this big to-do about getting NATO partners to spend more. What the heck are they going to spend for other than just to donate to Ukraine?
Look, the economic situation in Europe, the financial structure is ready to collapse. We're in bad shape. De-dollarization continues around the world because many countries are wisely distancing themselves from us because they anticipate a spike in the bond market. We've already been buying our own bonds for months and months and months. And the 10-year bond continues to inch upward, as all the bonds do. If it gets closer to 5%, then I think we're in a lot of trouble, because that has a huge impact on the $1 trillion+ interest payment that we're now stuck with. And we have a $7 trillion budget, which is outrageous, over $1 million of which is devoted to defense. Probably another 200, 300, 400 billion go into the Black Ops and CIA and National Security Agency budgets. So you're looking at $1.5 trillion that's all bound up with the warfare state. All of this is going to come tumbling down. This is the 11th hour. I think Zelensky knows that. But the notion that the Europeans can step up and fill the void, which is essentially what President Trump has said, we'll be backup. We'll support from a distance, but we're not going to take the lead on this. I mean, that's effectively what he said about the war with Russia, that the Europeans are the ones that have to come to terms. He's walking away from what is clearly a disaster. He never understood the gravity of the situation. He made a lot of ridiculous remarks. I think he sobered up, and he, especially after the Alaska summit, and said, that's fine, that's it. This is my last segment in this reality TV show called America Meets with Russia over Ukraine. And it's all going to stop. And I don't think there's anything that's going to keep NATO and the EU together too much longer.
Maybe money at all? I mean, because Ukrainian President Zelensky over the past 24 hours is now demanding that NATO send Ukraine $1 billion every month. He says that Ukraine deserves this because it's defending a critical principle on the European level by resisting Russia. So you and I are going to foot the bill for more money flowing into NATO, into this boondoggle?
Well, at some point, I think President Trump will stop the flow of money. But the sad part is that he really hasn't interrupted the flow that began under President Biden. I mean, you have to ask yourself at this point, when you look at the situation, what has he changed since Biden left office? And the truth is, certainly in the Middle East and in Europe, not much. But the Europeans are in a lot of trouble. These globalists that are in charge of Paris, Berlin, and London are on very, very weak ground. What are they supposed to do if they admit that the war is lost, that they can't sustain this war on behalf of Ukraine? Then they're admitting that everything they said was a lie. And it has been a lie from day one. Russia has no interest in invading and conquering the rest of Europe. Far from it. Nobody in their right mind in Moscow wants to manage the mess that we see in Europe today. In fact, they've insulated themselves from the mess. So is Orban, so is Poland, so is Slovakia. These states don't want anything to do with the catastrophe that exists inside these Western countries. So I think ultimately the whole thing will just fold quietly. Things they talk about, it'll end with a whimper, not a bang. And I think that's what will ultimately happen, because the European states are going to implode financially. I think Starmer and Macron and Merz are all going to be out of a job. End of discussion. Then what?
Where do you think things sit on the peace spectrum right now, and what advances is Russia making on the battlefield from a strategic perspective? Are they going as hard as they ever were, even after the Alaska meeting? Where do things stand militarily right now?
Well, I think something that's very interesting is you've got a lot of Russian special operations forces now operating in the outskirts of Odessa. And they've helped to target all the installations in Odessa that are of any military character or capability. It looks to me as though the Russians are prepping Odessa for eventual occupation. And the Ukrainians don't have forces to do anything about it. They can't protect it. They can't easily control it. So keep your eye on Odessa in the months ahead, because I'd be very surprised if that didn't fall into the hands of the Russians. As far as what's happening on the other side of the river, they're cleaning up. That's the best way to put it. That's something we've never understood. Everybody says, well, it's all about territory. No, it isn't. It's never been about territory. First of all, the areas the Russians now control are historically Russian anyway. And that was always true from the very beginning. And that includes, by the way, Crimea. When I say always, certainly since the 1770s. So that's a pretty long time. It's about as long as we've existed as a nation. So that's not new. The issue, though, for the Russians is they want to control whatever is necessary to ensure two things. First of all, that Ukraine is neutral, and that neutrality is aligned with essentially the kind of treaty that the Austrian State Treaty represents, something which limits Ukraine's military capability and absolutely excludes the possibility that there are any NATO forces on the ground. And by the way, the NATO forces, they don't have much to send. You know, the British would be lucky if they could mobilize 30,000 troops to send somewhere. The French are about the same. So who else is going to show up and send troops in? The Poles aren't going to send any more in. The president of Poland has made that very clear. No more Polish forces under any circumstances will go into Ukraine. And he's got, 3-4 million Ukrainians in his country. He's trying to figure out how to send them back. So the whole business is a sham. The notion that NATO can do anything at this point is absurd. And we are now turning our attention to Venezuela. You know, somebody pointed out to me, don't you think Maduro looks a lot like Saddam Hussein? Unfortunately, I think there's a lot of resemblance there. That does worry me because the last regime change operation we performed didn't come off very well.
Right.
But, you know, the bottom line is I think President Trump is going to quietly walk away from it. So the place that I worry much more about at this stage is not what will happen in Ukraine. The Russians will determine that outcome. They've already set the tone. President Trump knows that. He met with him and they told him the truth. You know, these are our conditions. They're not going to change. And at the same time, they also made it clear, and I think President Trump agrees with this, that they want good relations with us. It's up to us now to repair those relations and establish a new and better future for both the United States and Russia. But Ukraine, that's a matter now for the Europeans and Russia. And if the Europeans will have nothing to do with it, well, then Russia will take over. But again, who should be at the table discussing what happens with Ukraine and its borders? I think Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, and ultimately Germany. You could probably toss in the Lithuanians since they have a modest interaction with the Russian border, but that's about it. Why are the rest of these Europeans even interested? It's ridiculous. They have nothing to say. And that's what ultimately is going to happen. They won't have anything to say.
Let's be honest, most coffee gives you a quick hit that leaves you feeling jittery, foggy, reaching for another cup before lunch. But what if your coffee actually did something for your health? Rejuvenate Coffee is science-backed coffee. Real Arabica beans infused with CA-AKG, which is a compound shown to support cellular energy, metabolism, even healthy aging. It's not a gimmick. It's not trendy. It's built for people who take their health seriously, who want to show up with focus and strength every single day. If you care about how you feel right now and how you'll feel 10 years from now, this is your coffee. Go to 1775coffee.com/redacted and order Rejuvenate Coffee today. Fuel your body and protect your future. Check out Rejuvenate.
Well, let's talk about this Israeli strike on the hospital in Gaza because it was a military tactic known as a double tap. For those of us that don't know, that means you'd strike something, circle back, and hit it again when the medics and rescue workers come in. This was a tactic used reportedly by the CIA under Barack Obama, as well as used by Al-Qaeda in Iraq. Now, Israel issued the usual mea culpas, and then they said, oh, actually, no, we did look into it. There was a camera there. So we had to go and strike that in order to get that camera because the camera was filming IDF soldiers. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, this harkens to collateral murder, which was the video that WikiLeaks published where U.S. Apache helicopter fires on civilians mistaking a camera for a weapon. Now, President Trump said, I'm not happy about that. But Israel can weather that. They can weather the international condemnations, the press outrage, and then they stall with inquiries, and then they keep striking.
And then they do it again.
Right. So what do you make of this? Is this just we're going to scream, we don't like it, and they'll keep doing it, and that's what we're going to do next week, too? We'll see you here?
Well, two things. First of all, a precondition for the success of the so-called Greater Israel Project. And at some point, you know, it would be useful, I guess, Clayton, Natalie, if somebody put a map up that shows the Greater Israel Project. But for our purposes today, the elimination of the Palestinian population from both Gaza and the so-called West Bank is absolutely unchanging. They've got to do it. So, and then that's the first thing. Then secondly, remember that from the beginning, the so-called occupants of Gaza and the West Bank were characterized as Amalek. In other words, subhumans, animals, richly deserving of extermination. So from the Israeli standpoint, this is not an atrocity. This is part of the larger operation to kill or drive out everyone that lives in Gaza and ultimately on the West Bank. Now, to go back to the last question about what's going to happen, it doesn't make any difference what the Israelis do as long as they control the White House and Congress. And right now, Mr. Netanyahu controls both of those. Yeah, there you go. That shows you the so-called Greater Israel Project. How can you possibly advance to do a fraction of that in Syria, northern Iraq, Cairo, Israel, and anywhere else, unless you eliminate the population of Palestinians that are currently sitting inside your country? So that has to happen. I mean, it's kind of laughable, but you've got to understand something. Netanyahu is the president of more than Israel. He's the president of international financial power and capital that is committed by the United States, to a lesser extent, I would say equally committed by the City of London banks, to the idea that this is the opportunity to establish not just Israeli hegemony and control, but the control of the West, of the oil jugular in Iran, in the Persian Gulf, and ultimately the people that live there. This is part of if there is a strategy, and this is not President Trump's invention, it's a strategy that's been with us for a long time to get control of all the oil and gas that's in the region, because China and Northeast Asia in general, but especially China, are very heavily dependent upon it. So as long as he has control of the White House and Congress, and right now Mr. Netanyahu does, nothing is going to change. Doesn't matter how many of these people you murder. Whatever you do is your affair. The only comment that President Trump ever points out is, gosh, I wish he would get on with this and get it over with. Does that sound someone who is very concerned about the humanitarian disaster on his hands?
No. So he can not be happy about it. The rest of us have to just bend over and take it and just observe.
Yeah, but you got to remember something else. And this is something I've had difficulty dealing with. I talk to people all over the place, and I'm always interested in what they think. And I talk to a lot of Americans. They'll look at me straight in the eye and say, oh, kill them all. Get rid of them. Who cares? And this is a product of decades of systematic.
Who's them? It just people in Palestinians?
Yes, well,
Yeah,
Muslim Arabs
all the
in general. Muslim Arabs in general, but especially, the Palestinians that are there. Their view is all these people are exactly what Netanyahu said. Now, when I say they, I'm talking about a substantial chunk of people. I would certainly say at least 1 out of every 3 Americans I talk to pretty much takes that position. Who cares? Get rid of them. And again, that's part of the preparation through the mainstream media. And I know a lot of us that served in the Middle East. And you get different kinds of people that come out of that experience. And one group learns to hate, and that hatred never leaves because they lost a friend or they saw something happen they disliked. I mean, I'll be frank with you. When I was there in 91, the biggest challenge that I had during that war, which was in this massive tank battle that we fought, was getting people to stop shooting when I declared a ceasefire. And there were a lot of people that didn't want to cease fire. Their view was, let's get rid of all of them while we're here. We'll just do it, be done with it. There are people like that, and they don't change. And then there are others that look beyond the hostilities and say, good Lord, what are we doing here? We're not helping these people by killing them. We're not improving their lives. We're not improving ours. We don't benefit from this. There's no strategic payoff for us to go somewhere and kill tens of thousands of people. So you get different attitudes from different people. But the point is that right now, excuse me, I think there are just 1 out of 3 Americans, at least that I encounter, they could care less. And so how much
if you're a military, if you're a pilot, is this taught in any kind of military training? Like the double tap is a war crime. Let's not do it. Shouldn't this be sort of basic? We don't do that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the military strategy. Is it just like there's actually a military strategy to this, or is it just part of the Greater Israel Project, destroy all of these buildings?
Terrorists of various types and kinds, Irish Republican Army, Arab terrorists, Pakistani terrorists, whatever, have on more than one occasion set off an explosion. And then they wait. And there's another explosion that goes off once the people come in to rescue the individuals that are there. that's effectively what the Israelis do now. And this is because, in their view, these people are all the enemy. Who are these people that are rushing up to help? How many of them are also terrorists? We don't have time to sort it out. So we'll get another 30 or 40 dead, and that adds to the total, and that makes us safer. That's the view. The more of them we kill, the safer we are. That is the Israeli position. Now, I don't like that. It doesn't appeal to me. I never did anything like that. But that is a predisposition on the battlefield. If you take an enemy tank or armored fighting vehicle under fire, there's several out there. You put a round in one, you go to another one, put a round in that one, go back to the one you hit to begin with, hit them again.
Any brave politicians want to stand up and say enough is enough? You have like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massey. I mean, I can count them on one hand. There's so few of them. And none of them are president of the United States at the end of the day. Colonel, I want to point out you have a big event coming up here, and I want to promote it for everyone to go. And if they want to see the Colonel live with our friend Judge Napolitano, Natalie Brunell, and at the National Conversation, the Frontiers of Flight Museum in Dallas, Texas. This will be October 4th. So people can scan their tickets right there. There's a QR code right on the screen if anyone wants to go, if you guys happen to be in Dallas or nearby and want to come and see.
And let me tell you, people do want to see the Colonel. We spoke recently together at the Ron Paul Institute, and he had the longest line of people who wanted to take pictures. People really admire your intellectual honesty, and it was really a pleasure to see you're a rock star. I didn't realize that. I should have.
Well, I thought it was because you were standing nearby.
I wasn't. I was across the room. You had your own line.
Yeah, and people in their chat room saying, please, Colonel McGregor for president in 2028. But in lieu of that, at least they can come see you in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah.
So it's also supposed to be an interactive evening. We want to talk to the audience. We want the audience to talk to us. So we'll address questions. We've got a great lady who does that very, very well. And her name is Olga Ravazzi, very well prepared. She's taught at the college and university levels. And of course, you mentioned Natalie Brunell, who's a great financial analyst, a very sharp person. And then the judge, everybody knows him, he speaks for himself. But the idea is that we're going to take questions across the spectrum, from finance to culture to America at home and abroad. And then we want to interact with the audience. We want to know what people think. And we want to do this. If we're successful in Dallas, we want to go to different cities every 90 days, all across the United States, and repeat this. Because we think there are a lot of people out there who, number one, don't feel represented, and number two, don't get a chance to express their views on anything.
Yeah, exactly. And they feel like they're silenced, they're censored and blocked, and they don't feel like they have a voice right now. So again, October 4th. Go see the Colonel, go see Judge Knapp, Natalie Brunell, and the rest. Colonel, great to see you as always. Thank you for your time, as always.
Thanks, Clayton. Thanks, Natalie. Bye-bye.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Colonel.